Morning. Now that we are walking in and settling, I hope that the mingling and getting to know and the little chatter inside the venue has got us up and running, and our creative juices are already oozing out and we're ready to tackle the program and start the day. Which is great because we need that energy, those endorphins, we need them. We're about to write and have a great session. So without further delay, good morning, colleagues, students, and members of the community. My name is Xhosa Iimbongi, and I will be program director for today's event. With that being said, I will hand over to Dr. Jenny to welcome us, obviously, and give us an overview of why we're here today. Thank you, Doc.
Hello, everyone. Hi. I'm Jenny Dupree, and I work for the Chair for Critical Studies in Higher Education Transformation, which is a really, really long name. I think I only started remembering it properly after working there for a year. But we generally call ourselves CriSHET, and we're based at Nelson Mandela University. And it's a very great pleasure to welcome you here today. I know it's a Saturday, so thank you especially for coming out to join us today. We really hope you'll enjoy the program. And this idea really came out of, I think, I must mention Keneilwe Natu, who has been working with Mr. Brian Walter for a while, I believe, and working with the Helen Vale and Salt Lake poets, and who's very invested in creative writing. And they suggested that we have some kind of poetry roundtable or workshop. So that's been in the works since last year, and this here is the fruition of that. And the idea really is for us to get to know each other across different spaces, across different organizations, different communities, and also from between the university and other communities. And so we really hope that this session, apart from giving you some time to write and think, is also a space for you to get to know other people who are invested in creative writing, and to build those relationships that are so important. We all know that the creative arts are not necessarily the most well-supported, yes. So I think that makes it especially important to have those nurturing relationships. So yes, so thank you again for being here. In my little welcome, I just want to make a few specific mentions. Firstly, to those people who are involved in this particular session, the organizations. I know we have the Bay Creative Writing Development Project, we have the East Cape Poets, we have the Nelson Mandela University Lang and Lit Department. I believe we have attendees also from Mandela Bay Theatre Complex and Amazmi Museum, so welcome to you as well. And we also have Imbizo Arts. I would also like to offer a special word of welcome to our keynote today, Unati Slasher, who's here somewhere. Hi Slasher. The funny story about Slasher is he and I have known each other for quite a long time. Back in the day when I was tutoring, I think, English literature, he was in my class. So you can, if you know Slasher, you can imagine what that was like. So it's really nice to have you here as a speaker. And also, thanks for joining us to Nompumezo Buzani and Kholisi Nyezwa for being respondents today. Also, a specific word of welcome to all those people here today who will be facilitators. You will meet them now when we break up into our writing sessions. So yes, and then basically just welcome to all of you. Thank you for being here. We really hope you have a good time, meet some interesting people, and of course, get some time to write. So thank you very much. And if you need anything, just grab me or Keneilwe or Asi and let us know. Thanks.
I'll just do that. Okay. Right. Thank you, Dr. Jenny, for a lovely warm welcome. So we are gonna kickstart for real now. I was given a task, and I feel that my task holds a lot of responsibility, and you guys can see that I'm quite small, and I would need your guys' help for this. So one of the tasks that I had to do was to set the tone for the event. my mission was to encourage a lively and yet meaningful engagement and participation. And so I really need you guys. Also, I am no literary scholar, so, with my words, it's gonna be very difficult to make it poetic and creative, but I know my vibe. My vibe is a vibe, okay? So I'm introducing a nice little icebreaker game I call Rhyme and Reason, where words fuse and magic happens, essentially. So it's a word association game, and in light of the event, Poetry Workshop, I will say a word that relates to poetry, and everyone is actually included in all of this, so please don't be nervous. I'll say a word, and then someone else is gonna say a word that relates to what I'm gonna say. So for example, if I say hot, then Shanae is gonna say beat, right? So hot, beat, then it moves. If I said hot, maybe someone is gonna say burn, for example. So I say hot burn. Does that make sense? And then there's gonna be a twist. I know there will be a twist because nerves get to us, ne? And someone is gonna say a word that is so unrelated to what is happening. That's where the twist is. So you're gonna build on that contrast and change the narrative and make it interesting. So here's my word. I think we'll start here with uZomzi and we'll meander through the crowd. So in light of poetry, my word is imagination. Life.
Pain.
Sky. Creativity.
Journey.
Walk.
Universe.
Struggle. Pain.
Again.
Feminine.
Pleasure.
Oh. Neil.
What? Family?
We need things going. Say whatever. People will
Joy.
Dreams. Astrology.
Whoa. Big words.
Moonlight.
2, 3, 1.
Haunting.
3, 2, 1. It's fine. Go.
Shining.
Euphoria.
Commemoration.
Commemoration.
Silly.
Silly.
Yeah.
Silly. Silly.
Sea waves.
Sea waves.
Crying.
Abstract.
Abstract.
Dedication.
Dedication.
Motivation.
Motivation.
Boundless.
Writing.
Writing. 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1.
Reading.
Reading.
Speaking.
Speaking.
Education.
Education.
Self-love.
Self-love.
Future.
Future.
Past.
Past.
Movement.
Movement.
History.
History.
Love.
Love.
Dedication.
Dedication. 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1.
Infiltration.
Infiltration.
Poetry.
Poetry.
Tiring.
Diary.
Motivation.
Motivation.
Change.
Change.
Peculiar.
Peculiar.
Sunrise.
Time.
What did you just say?
Time.
Time run. Time run.
Time.
Time. Ending.
Ending. And there we have ended our icebreaker. So the purpose of this icebreaker was to get people to not overthink. This is free writing, right? We're expressing ourselves. Express yourself. It doesn't matter what someone else says. We've built on so many narratives today. There was peculiar, pain, feminine, everything. Also, we can say ukuthi, it connects at the end of the day. So now that that is done, I'm hoping that we are... Ne? Okay. So now we are going to separate to our breakaway rooms. Now, our name tags, we have stickers on our name tags. That's not for decoration. That's to put us into our breakaway rooms. We're going to connect. So Shanae is not going to be in there with her friend. She's going to be in there with a student from NMU and with Mr. Brian. We're getting to know each other, being in a different atmosphere, and not, again, to overthink. So with our stickers, we have light blue stickers. Everyone with light blue stickers will leave with Shanae Williams. Everyone will follow Shanae with light blue. Red stickers are Umxolisi Nyezwa. Umxolisi, can we see where you are? Umxolisi will take you to your guys' boardroom for your breakaway. We have the neon pink. The neon pink is a small, like bright pink sticker. That is Mr. Brian. Mr. Brian, can show your hand so that your people can follow you. Big pink circle. The big pink circle is Zama. Zama is sitting over there. She will take you. Silver star, small silver star. Fortunate Dracha will be your facilitator. Yellow star is Teacher D, right there at the back. Teacher D is your yellow star. Our gold stars are Unompumezo Buzani. Nompumezo, Mama, show yourself. Thank you. And that's the gold stars. Green is hide. I think I'm saying it correctly, I think. I'll double check with my greenies, my favorite color. I'll be with you, I swear. And then purple, we have Kevin. Kevin right there. If your sticker is purple, you will follow Kevin. And then orange is Henry. Is Henry in the house? Henry, thank you. Henry is going to be your facilitator for orange stickers. Is everyone, is it clear? Alrighty. Please meet up with your facilitators and then we can disperse to our breakaway rooms. Our second session of this afternoon. With this hour that we had spent in separate rooms, I believe that most of us here have a lot to share. So we have been allocated time to reflect on any insights, themes, observations, and even your pieces that you guys wrote on in the breakaway rooms. So I'll ask facilitators to kind of give us a brief, maybe, of the whole process of the writing and the experience of participants taking part in the writing exercise. So I'll take Fortunate, I'm sorry, like, you will have to take the force, so.
Hi everyone, thanks Asi. So I was facilitating obviously one of the free writing exercises and I think it went well, however, one can be biased. So I'll also hand over to the people who are participating. But it went well in the sense that I like how free writing exercises, they break down, the hierarchy of instructor-learner, but we're all just peers who genuinely love literature and we can share freely. And what's also nice about the free writing exercises is that it takes away I'm not a good writer, because we all begin sort of in the same level of we're just coming in with our raw ideas, raw feelings, and raw writing, and then we're all working together sort of from the feedback session. So we're all sort of starting in the same pace, other than, there's someone else who's already at a higher level, if I can put it like that, of writing, but we're all just coming with a draft after the first session, and then we work and build it from there. And we had such an interesting feedback session where we were just honest, what works well, what doesn't work, and what to improve, and people were very, very receptive in the feedback session. But without being biased, I'll just hand over to Baba Umpumelelo and Sitembelele to also just share what they think about our session.
Hi. I don't know if it's still morning or afternoon already. I think generally it was a nice session. As she said, she has already said, I mean, everybody started from zero. And yeah, no me and you, us and they, no hierarchy, just all of us on a horizontal plane, equal plane. And yeah, maybe, I don't know if it would help to read the pieces or not.
Share. If
Yeah,
anyone wants to share.
let me share. My piece is very short. It's not a long one. Mirage, that's a title of the piece. Yes, Mirage. With these wind farms falling against your horizons, like emeralds kissing a crimson sky, you boast of progress. What many on your backyard continue to die and still continue to stand at the buttress to the millennial of your successes, the only bridge to the shut-up house of truth, full of blood, yet like a mother's lullaby whose lips are chipped, singing a song of hope to an unsuspecting infant, you shove me away to an agonized state, a mirage. The sweet melodies from your primeval citadels wish to serve as an opium. How many soldiers like Samson died at your lap? How many slept in your bloody bosom? Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. I'm pretty sure that, well, I know I would want to know what a mirage, like what that means, but we can discuss during lunch, you know, and connect.
Okay.
So we have about 9 minutes to have more reflections if anyone wants to share anything, like your experience writing. I don't know how you felt with the whole workshop. Can you? Oh, okay.
Tingatati podium. I don't want people to break their necks. Okay. School vibes. Now, Mzala, it was my turn to cross my arm around my head and touch the left ear. If you failed that exercise those days, you would not be admitted. You were still too young to start schooling. To be woken up every morning with cold water on your face, blankets forcefully removed off your warm body, to be roughly shaken off your sleep, thrown into the bath, thrown into the primus stove boiled water, and later face the steel iron comb. You could hear your hair break, your skin scratch. You would not be part of the walk to school, meeting on the way children of your age with unkempt hair, Vaseline-smeared faces, girls, lip-eyed, smeared little lips. You are not going to school that year until you cross your right arm across your head and successfully touch your left ear. Yes, I crossed my arm and touched my little ear. I wondered as I sat cross-legged in my class why there was one desk for about 50 learners and one boy sitting pretty alone in that two-seater furniture. Why him only when there was a big space for two? Later that month, I learned that he was the cleverest of the class and not the son of the class teacher as I have suspected. Edward looked older than all of us, older to be in sub A, yet he was here sitting high, the rest sitting on the floor, right fingers on the mouth staring at an empty blackboard, some looking at walls, some at their peers' faces. Class teacher Miss Mzinyati busy filling the register on her desk. Quiet ruled in class. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you also have, I think we'll take, sorry? You want to? Oh.
Yeah, I'm just going to reflect on what we did. So, hi, my name is Brian, and at our writing room, basically we had to transcribe sound from this thingy, a Tibetan singing bowl. And from there, I just learned a few things, many of which are, there's so many ways to take something, you know, and there was so many ways that people can take so many things, like a singular thing can be taken in so many ways. Some people saw God in the sound, some people saw something that was bad in the sound, some people saw something in themselves in the sound. And, you know, like meeting other people is just like that. You can just like find so many versions of yourself in someone, in other people, and like in spaces where so many people have lived so much and some have lived so little. I think it's important to take everything into account. Like everything anyone says is very important, and someone else may see that thing as everything that can mean everything to them. So like that's mine.
Thank you very much. Very insightful, very insightful. We have 4 minutes left if anyone wants to share anything. Mama, right?
Is there no golden star?
Okay. This one is called I Had a Father. At 18 you had me, raised me, left me. Did you ever want me? I've always tried to know you. So many questions I asked. Questions that would let me in, but maybe too much to ask. You never said you loved me. I never showed my ache. As if you built a wall so strong, not even you could break. All I've achieved for your approval, the first in everything I do, yet never heard the words, well done, I am proud of you. But months before you passed and went to be with the Lord, you opened up a door I've never seen before. You let me see a part of you I thought didn't exist. What made you so cold, made you so distant? Tenderness, warmth, pride, love, 6 months in a place unfamiliar, of me being your daughter and me having a father. I was loved and I was cherished. I was wanted and I was treasured. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Oh, okay. Thank you for everyone that shared their writings and their personal stories and thoughts. And I think that's one thing that I actually love about writing is I journal myself. So I love being or getting in touch with yourself, like meeting yourself intimately in that manner. So thank you very much for everyone who shared today, and hopefully the sessions, the writing sessions helped some way, one way or another. So up next, we will be having some performances. I'm gonna call upon Mr. Brian to start off, the performance part of the session, as well as Ukatleho, who will also be performing a piece for us. Mali as well will be enticing us with, the works. So give it up for Mr. Brian and all our performances. Please come up. Do you want to stand?
I think I'll just get the mics now.
Okay.
Just so that
You want to dance?
No, that mic stand. Thanks. I just don't have enough hands. Hello, okay, that's perfectly fine. My name is Brian Walter, and I work with the Bay Creative Writing Development Project, partly with the Helen Vale group down there, and I'll read one poem about Helen Vale, and with the Salt Lake poets also, who work out in that area. I'm just going to read a few poems from Allegories of the Everyday, which is a book I put out a couple of years ago. And the first poem is a type of quest based on Amos Tutwale, his book, The Palm Wine Drinkard. And it's a book I taught at Fort Hare many years ago. And really, it's quite a book. The idea is the palm wine drinkard dies. No, his wine tapster dies, and the palm wine drinkard needs his wine tapster to go and get his wine. And he goes to Dead's Town to try and recover him from the dead. And this poem is about that. It's called After Dead's Town. Once you've been to the place of the dead, if you're lucky enough to come back, you will not come back the same person as you went in. After Dead's Town. At Dead's Town he finds that the deads walk, of course, only backwards, while he still treads like us with his face, and that the deads don't like our blood. And so with his new eyes he proves the sheer difference there, and grasps the strong immediacy of the laws, knowing quickly that he cannot stay, though the dead and long lost tapster must. So he swigs for the last times the good palm wine from his homely tapster for 3 days, living in the shade of the lifeless zone. And at last, walking home to his living town, the young deads along the road scorn him, and is chased back to the roadless bush, our naked world, our unlit, unbuilt labyrinth. But from the dead, he has carried out the world's egg and becomes such a judge that he can steady earth and sky, setting the world in its place below in balance. But our man-judge God won't crack the unsolvable mysteries, but he passes them to us, living readers. He passes on his old quest to visit death and grapple with our unknowing, as all good storytellers do, or fine drinkards on this laughing, trying, and troubled earth. That is where we live. Poetry in South Africa with the Helen Vale poets. We lock the gates, security said we should, with an iron chain to keep the gangsters out. Though we know in fact there's no keeping them at bay. If they want to, they can come into both your home and head, and do what it is they do. But our poetry room is our retreat, where words are wrought, so we lock the gate to keep our comparisons safe, our metaphors and meanings, our alliteration and our rhyme, the trickling stanzas here in this room where we congregate words and sensitivity and thought. This little poem, I've been blessed. I have a wife who's an academic, and she was once invited to the West Indies, to the little island of Guadeloupe. And as an academic's husband, I was able to traipse along. So I spent some time in Guadeloupe, and it's French, they speak French and a Creole. And this poem is called Stella Maris, Semper Virgo, which of course is Latin for Stella Maris is the star of the sea, the morning star, always virgin. Of course, that is a title of the Virgin Mary, huh? And I was walking around in this little town in Guadeloupe, and of course the people there are descended from slaves. That's the black population, descended from slaves, French-speaking. It is a strange world to be in. Stella Maris, Semper Virgo. Walking randomly in town, as I like to do, enabling the unexpected, I find myself strolling up a road that rolls down past the empty stadium, past the lonely lagoon of the multitudinous crab folk, and the wet bird print, mud and smells, and then out to sea. My mind wandering always to the slave narratives I read by night, fathoming other walkers and their long shadows. I feel myself trailing clouds of history, where everything I am has become accusation. My language, being, education, work, and all. A small child is walking up, blue top and white shorts and skinny dark legs. Her hair is that homely African swathe. It's her world. Giving her space, I look down. But I hear a tiny bonjour. An old man's heart is easily rent. As meek words drop and bless, I am now part of a world, a brief humanity, but I'm grasping for French. Bonjour, I respond, late, forlorn, a forgetful elder, wondering how caught I am by virgin kindness. That tiny girl made me feel suddenly at home. But an older man, I've called this final poem Latter Day. I have come full circle. Once an old child, God's trustworthy, now a puerile elder in the making, as trustworthy as hell, seeping wit like a sieve, worn and rusted, wetting like an infant, like a well, and leaks will run to nothing. I roll my trouser legs and way to new paddocks. Let anyone ask why. I know, I can tell. I have come full circle, I.
Thank you, Mr. Brian. I'll just let the performers come up. They know they have 10 minutes, so. Katlego Mali, who's coming? Okay.
Good afternoon. My name is Tina Bubuya. Oh, okay. My name is Tina Bubuya. People know me as T Mali. I wasn't originally scheduled to perform today, therefore I wasn't prepared, but I will read a couple that I think are appropriate for this occasion. The first one I'll read is titled Those Places. I wrote this poem about 12 years ago when I was in matric. It was during a leadership camp for the prefects. And what I hope you draw from this is some sort of inspiration, or if one is to turn a new leaf on their life or chase a goal that they've always thought about and were doubtful, I hope that this will assist in some way or another. Okay, here it goes. Do you know those places where the nights are still and undisturbed by vulgar urban traffic? Do you know those places where the skies are dark on cloudy nights, only illuminated by the handheld lamp of a woman walking from one room to another? Those places where grasses glow different shades of lime in devotion to the moon and stars on clear nights, where lakes attempt to recreate the past, like Gatsby, by reflecting light emitted by constellations that exploded in spectacular supernovae centuries ago. You do know those places, where the buck grazes in tranquility uninterrupted by the intruding tourist, where the distant city whistles and hollers cannot rudely awaken the dreaming antelope. You have seen those places, where lost love is forgotten and new curiosities are aroused, where our flaws face the facts and our characters are reassessed, where the indiscernible rhythms of nature's instinctive tunes beget new acquaintanceships and journey upon untrodden landscapes. Those places where cacophonic chatter morphs into complex drum patterns that act as a beat to melodic inceptions of curious relations, where incessant uproar is the equivalent of young virgins singing to the birth of a new empire. You remember that place, where the strumming of guitars and the tapping of feet kiss to signify the beautiful bonding of music and dance to form immortal melancholy memories. Yes, those places, where the rivers are deep and the lakes are vast, the waters murky and the currents heavy, where life is stripped of its societal pretense and moral oxymorons, where character is left bare as the wild beasts and aquatic fantasies. Those very places, where adolescents dream and the future is born. Yeah. Okay, that's it for this one. And then I have another poem which is ironically titled, I Don't Know How to Write Poetry. Okay. I don't know how to write poetry. Definitely not anymore. I sit clueless at my table, staring blankly at my phone screen. I get cold feet. It's painful. But I seem to have lost the gift I had before. Maybe when I was younger, I could conjure words and spill my feelings using awesome terms with skills appealing, or draw from experience in search of healing and stack up pages of flowing verse until the ceiling. But now, there's emptiness. I just don't have it anymore. Maybe it's writer's block, you know? Just a temporary clog that will fade to dust, and soon enough, I'll be back to my old self, filling pages up with amazing stuff, but at this very moment, let's just say it's tough. I don't know how to write poetry. Can't even fake the funk. My brain is stuck. My 2 cents are not enough to pay for lunch. I need to sharpen my weapons. My blade is blunt and I have big game to hunt. Tell the music man to play me drums. I need some inspiration to wake me up from this lazy slump. It's strange to some that I have a bungee cord strapped onto me, but I'm afraid to jump. I don't know how to write poetry. Took me the whole day to come up with that first line. I couldn't think of anything. I was caught up deciding whether to judge something that girls like or tell you all about the betrayal I've been hurt by. Truthfully, either of them would have worked fine, but instead, I wrote a poem describing pain of the worst kind. Can you lose your talent? It looks like you can. And it hurts more than losing your life savings to a Bitcoin mining scam. It kills you slowly. You have this hope that it's still somewhere inside you, crammed between your heart and diaphragm, but it's just not there. You are a fool planting olives in the driest land in the desert without the slightest chance that the rain will ever strike the sand. It grapes you, squeezing the breath out of you like a python's grasp. So you light some gas of the finest brand, hoping your mind expand, but it's pointless. Your heart is hollow as a viper's fang. You're stuck, knees broken, thighs are cramped, paralyzed and trapped, and you keep falling when you try to stand. I don't know how to write poetry. I'm a man who speaks in a secret language which happens to capture the full spectrum of human emotions flawlessly. I am the excitement of a new endeavor and the heartache of a broken dream. Forgive me if occasionally I wander away from the chosen theme. I don't know how to write poetry. Definitely not anymore.
Thank you, Mali. I'm seeing faces with smiles in the room, so I guess you can write poetry. Thank you so much for that. Sounds so amazing. Our last performance, we are going to be finished like a bit early, the session, which is, I guess, nice. So, Katlego, you may come up and make us smile.
Hello, everybody. I hope you're all well. My name is Katlego Mofokeng, and I am a poet. I'm going to do this I'm going to break it up. There shouldn't really be disclaimers for things like this, but in another lifetime, let's just say I wrote from the heart. And so I will be reading 2 poems from that lifetime. And in this lifetime, I'm currently somebody who advocates for human rights and the like, and the last poem is more reminiscent of that. So, to begin, I have spent lifetimes in structures with Eden's descendants. Knowledge carved into her pulped ashes lays delicately atop my awaiting palms, open in ready worship. This garden, whose grief lay at my fingertips, whose legacy demands silence as retribution. I hope to plant a seed in this garden. Hope many will come to read the flower into which she blooms. That said, to offer an introduction, I am the apple of my mother's eye. Somewhere out there, Eve salivates. This next one is really about love and the recognition of love itself and how it manifests in one's body. And it's called Rare Occasions. I wish I'd acknowledged that your name was an occasion, one that requires fancy dress and one's preparedness. Instead, when I uttered it the first time, after a clumsy confession, a stuttering introduction, your name stole the breath from my lungs. Changed the frequency of my heartbeat. It formed a sanctuary in my belly and concocted a kaleidoscope of butterflies. This occasion was once I chose to attend, really. Already ill, I knew any further disruptions to my bodily functions would result in a fatality. I don't regret it though. That first time, I don't regret how I repeated it like a mantra in my head, how I had to say it right before I even called you. A part of me must have known deep down what you'd mean to me, what the utterance of this particular name would bring for me. So yes, I seldom say your name, seldom call you by it, but when I do, I clear my throat and allow for one last deep breath before my lungs collapse. My heart stutters. My stomach no longer knows its function. Before my hands know what to do, my eyes lose what little vision they have, and when the occasion presents itself, I stand, gladly rising to acknowledge it, to acknowledge you. I acknowledge you. This one's called Roots, and it's basically, I want to know your clan names so that they become a red carpet I provide while in your company. I want to thank each ancestor for their relation to the other that in turn gave me you. I want to remember your lifeline, your ancestral history, want to mark their importance, your importance. You are woman, nestled against insecurity, forced to suckle on it as if it provides nourishment, yet from you there is no insecurity, simply strength, simply a soul well acquainted with pain, turned into an empire using every slur. You are an architect whose vision has led you to me, breathless, inviting, insistent with a smile that could make anyone's knees buckle. Words uttered from you are cautious, searching, finding their way into my consciousness, grasping it without fear, commanding my attention. A mantra that gravitates deliverance into one's universe. May the sway of your hips defy anyone to question your royal lineage. May they be traced upon with caution, be treated like glass. May anyone who looks at you never do so in haste, for you need to be taken in slowly, patiently, every detail committed to memory. That was me in another lifetime. The poem I'm about to do right now, and I think that's mainly why I was invited to come here, is because of this main poem right now. It was very, very well liked, and it is called The Manifesto of the Excluded. I am not a martyr. I am simply down on bended knee, because what I have to offer is a prayer, a plea. May it all end with me. May I be the barrier that prevents this injustice from moving forward. May I provide answers to the questions we thought were buried with old leaders. Their ghosts haunt the democracy we've inscribed into wooden panels we use to open this nation's supremacy. May it all end with me. Beat the drums, command their spirits forth, tap feet to ground in trance rhythm. Offer them an altar, affirm them in murmured lyric. In their presence, we implore in chronology 1. Bring forth the women on the outskirts of the room 2. Concentrate the voices of the youth in popular assembly 3. Restore the dignity of our forefathers 4. Unearth their injustices and meet them with revolutionary authenticity. And 5, walk us past this threshold into freedom. 6, Steve Bantu Biko lay shackled on the top floor. The 6th floor of the Sanlam building 6. His conviction unwavering, he met his demise. 6, I reside behind the last door on the 4th floor. The 6th door, my conviction, unwavering. 6, may it all end with me. Thank you.
Okay, well, you guys can see it's not me. So I know I said the session was gonna end like earlier, but we are here now. Thank you so much, Katlego. Thank you to all our performers. And now we'll have our last performer, Usiliziwe Jago. Come up, Butwam. Dala sikulindile. Please come up, please, guys.
Good afternoon. As she had said, my name is Siliziwe Jago. I am a writer, I'm a poet. I'm looking up to the writer at the back. First of all, I am so sorry I am late. And I am definitely feeling nervous. Yabona uba ibindimu ndifunga umama ingcwaba lesihlwengu ngeselintshulingca mhlambi ngesendivelo kwesithathu ezinkundleni zamatyala ngezitsholo zokubulala ngongenalusini thina sitsho sikude emsini yona le ndoda kuye umkhonto ukwazi endlini ingxaki ngethumba alikhula noba kuphina lenkedama ikugula ayisenakhaya ihamba incathama nje kuba kusihlwa kungoko sikwazi ukuvuka umqabaqabe belele ngabikwa hlaba egula enencwina ejonge igqajolo lomthandazo icengela ukuphila xa ukufa kufikile sizama nantoni naye nokubala ichiza kuba singena kuliqala ekuqaleni uphahla thonsi nathonsi elivelayo silifaka ipotapota siyalitywina imimoya ilifuna phansi izijingitshane zilijule kwanti kubuhlungu kulelo kubeke phike xa into enziwa ngamabomu ndaphinda ndayicebisa le ndoda ndithi uyabona uba ibindimu ingcwaba lesihlwengu ngeselintshulingca ndifunga umama mhlambi ngesendivelo kwesithathu ezinkundleni zamatyala ngezitsholo zokubulala ngongenalusini thina sitsho sikude emsini ubunzulu benxeba asibazi sanela kukulithelekelela xa sinosondela singabalekelwa ngumzimba ngamehlo odwa nokufikelela phofu nawo sisenokuwavala le ntlungu angayiboni sisenokubuyela emakhaya siqhubekeke nobomi sibalise ndaba zimbi sibalise neentsomi yona le ndoda kuye umkhonto ugwaza endlini ayinathuba lakubulala enoxanduva lokuthuthuzela umntwana imbeke esifubeni athi ncwaba kodwa tu ukulala imseza amanzi kuthumalala isinqala siyava kuthiwa nonini ukhe wafa isiqaqa zinzingo zokubukela inzala yakhe idliwa ziintlungu kule ndoda inkophe ezinkcenkceza amanzi imisebe iyalana ezinzulwini zobusuku iindlebe zayo zikhongozela incwina ebangelwa ziintlungu thina sikude emsini ubunzulu benxeba asibazi sanela kukulithelekelela sixhasana ngemilomo xa ezibhlungu zikwehlela kwangalomlomo omnye siyahleka kunani ke ukuvuthela kule ndawo inenxeba izokoma ikhulikhokho izophola ngoba ziyashokoxeka ziyaphela into zobopha inkunzi kukunyamezela indoda yokwenene xa ibona umkhwetha iyavakalelwa ingazenzisi isikhalo sakho sisive ungekakhamisi ungazonzakalisi mfo wasemzini sikho sonke chothubekho ndoda ekhathalayo xa laba lokulilela ubukho bakho buyipilisi eneneni xa uwedwa enyanyeni usenokucinga ngokuthathela umthetho ezandleni ze kuwe umthetho uqinisa isandla uvalele umkhuseli sapho ibe ngubani ke uyawukhusela usapho eneneni ubudoda abungazigalo nezoso maxa wambi kukuzikisa ukucinga ngezigqibo ezinothintela ingomso ukhumbule ithumba likhula noba kuphina. My name is Silis, by the way.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Thank you so much, Siliziwe, the power of language and emotion and shared experiences, that set the tone. That really set the tone. That was amazing. Thank you so much. So with that being said, we will be now going into lunch. Sizoba nourished. So I think lunch is served that side. So yeah, this is just for me to say, let us get up and get food and stretch. Before we do move though, Uzomzi is doing social media content, and anyone who wants to share a brief of how the process or the day has gone so far, please meet with her. Or also, if she comes up to you and insists on taking videos, please share your insights and collabo. Let's do this. Let's unite. Let's share our experiences and enjoy lunch. Thank you. Oh, Jenny wants to say something.
Just to say, lunch isn't actually here yet. So, but please, I think let's break, stretch your legs, and hopefully lunch will be here very shortly, and then we can eat. Thanks.
Oh, my bad. All right, I can tell that energy is up right now, and that we had a great lunch and it hit the spot and we're feeling nourished. So we're about to get into the main event with the keynote address. Colleagues, may I please ask that we settle? Thank you. Thank you. So we're going to shift gears and we are going to call upon our keynote speaker and respondents for this panel discussion that we are going to have. May I request that the speakers come up as I read their bios and introduce them. So we're going to start off with our keynote speaker, Unathi Slasha. Unathi Slasha is a poet, a novelist, short story writer, polemist, and literary scholar from Dispatch, whose work reimagines and subverts Guni folklore to explore what he calls the unlanguaged world. He is the author of the novella Ya Hills, nominated for the 2019 and 2020 Nomo Awards, and winner of the 2025 Iskanji Book Prize for his manuscript, The Hollow Sound of Lightweight Bodies. Oh, a mouthful. Please may we welcome Unathi Slasha. Joining him, our respondents, Nompumezo Buzani, is a South African playwright and author whose work preserves social and historical narratives through theater and literature. She is the author of the grade 10 prescribed drama Hamba Nam Dipheleke, and her book Imida is referenced at Boston University in the USA. Her contributions to literature and the arts have earned her several awards and recognition. Next up is Mr. Mxolisi Nyezwa, is a poet from New Brighton, Blawa, who has been writing for over 30 years and whose debut collection, Song Trials of the 2000, won both the South African Literary Award and the Thomas Pringle Award for Poetry. His latest book, Blawa's Inconsolable Spirits, was published in 2023 by Deep South in Makanda. Wow. I'm so excited to hear what we're going to be expecting from Unathi. This session will be facilitated by Uzomzi. Zomzi, may you please come up? and take us through, Unati. The floor is yours, Budwam.
Good afternoon, everybody. I hope lunch was lovely. I'm going to hand over to one of PE's most amazing poets. I don't know if any of you have heard his work. Very, not lyrical, but very graphic, very visual. I will hand over to Unati to give us his keynote. Will you be sitting? Okay. No, I'll hand over my mic and I'll switch.
How do you put this thing on? I haven't been invited. I haven't been invited in this space, so I've forgotten how you put this thing on. You know? It's been a while since I've been standing in front of people, you know, because of some of my politics. So, yeah. Good afternoon to everyone. To the poets that we spent this morning doing free writing. It was a beautiful thing. I haven't done that in a long time. But I want to say thank you to the Chair for Critical Studies in Higher Education Transformation for the invite. I would like to open up with two epigraphs. Wilson Harris says, "This was the beginning of a task I could not evade." Odysseus Elitis says, "We are suffering from the absence of a common language. Our values do not constitute a common language." I'm honored and delighted to be partaking in this poetry workshop, but I want to make it clear from the onset that this is not going to be a linear talk. It will be a skeletal presentation, a rudimentary reflection that will move with the openness of what literary theorist and poet Charles Olson refers to as projectic verse. I hope you will receive it for what it is, a shout out in three parts to the lively urban spirit of the spoken word and underground rap protagonist of the early 2000s. I refer to this short-lived period as the lively urban spirit whose history is yet to be staged. Still, it's a history that has shaped our consciousness, our outlooks and outlets as the young generation of creatives that has come to struggle with negotiating our place within the world of the post-apartheid experience. In this collective experience, at its core, lies the question of self-definition and subject making. The title and theme under which we are gathered here today, we all know, is Staging History, East Cape Poetry Across Time. I have a few remarks, if not provocations, concerning the notion of staging history. I have to confess first that when I received the invite, I was a bit hesitant to accept it. Because of the near impossibility of the task of tracing the histories and trajectories of poetic forms and their point of views across time. I am referring to different points of departure and perspectives such as what poetry is and what it is not, or better, what makes and unmakes a poem, what kind of poetic style, technique, and thematic preoccupations one is attracted to, and what school of thought has influenced and shaped their work. In my view, it would be dishonest to think that our literary predilections and aesthetic aspirations are not touched by our social strata, our social condition and conditioning. I was also hesitant because it's impossible for me to talk about poetry without a reference and reliance on the unwritten history of spoken word and underground rap music in the Bay. I came to poetry through rap and reading. I have never thought of the two in isolation. Up to this day, I refuse and resist to separate the spoken and the written word, except in cases when the motive is to emphasize the variation within and legitimacy of each poetic practice and tradition. After all, in the last word, the difference between poetry in print and the one on tape or stage is similar to the difference between a haiku and an epic, a sonnet and a lyric. Each form or mode of expression has its own internal logic, language, poetic principles that demand to be obeyed in order to identify and categorize that particular form. Thankfully, I've always been interested and invested in the poetics of disobedience. The so-called tension between the practitioners of poetry in print and the practitioners of performance poetry, the page and the stage, immediacy and reflection, has long haunted South African literary establishment. Since Theo Soga, one of the first and major isiXhosa intellectuals who launched the isiXhosa newspaper Indaba in 1862, the question of transition from the oral plane to the written word has been an open question that warranted exploration. Debates were had on how best to negotiate between orature and literature. Critics such as Ndongela Masilela and Jeff Opland agree that in the works of poets such as Nkai, Gweto, Yalimanisi, Melikaya Mbutuma, among others, the question, or rather the dilemma, has been resolved. Yet, despite this history, now and again, the question of literariness and legitimacy of spoken word poetry, and by extension, underground rap music, still continues to be raised by conservative academics and other antagonists, as if spoken word poetry exists in an empty space, as if it is not an outgrowth of the old tradition of being Iimbongi, the poet of social conscience. This is the connection I hope to emphasize in order to overlook difference and stress the link, the unifying factor between the poetry of social conscience embodied by Ngai, Mbutuma, Yalimanisi, and underground conscious rap or spoken word poetry. In my examples here, I am thinking of the work of Khululekani, Smack Lounge Camp, Isithunywa Zohlanga. These two strands of poetry share the same commitment to social engagement, capacity to shape consciousness, and the ability to organize and shape public opinion through poetic provocations. And I believe that Mqolisi Nyenzo here established this in his I Heard Rhythms, a study of poetry of Maskandi. There is no doubt that the inventive tradition of Ukubonga is the mother of spoken word poetry. I refer to poetry composed to be performed in public. I refer to poetry often maligned, mocked, muted, dismissed for being improper, for being overly and overtly political, lagging and lacking in aesthetic aspiration. In this discursive drama, one is instantly made aware of deep-seated assumptions and value rubrics that allow some among us to arrogate the right to judge, to arrive at the conclusion that only a certain piece of writing written in a particular privileged form qualifies as respectable poetry. In my view, spoken word poetry has always been a practice relegated to the side road of the South African literary establishment. The spoken word artists are barely rewarded with publishing deals or prizes. I suppose the reason this kind of poetry is snubbed by the establishment is either intellectual intimidation or intentional devaluation, willful disregard. Some literary practitioners and commentators who consider themselves outside the spoken word community are too comfortable with their one way of reading. They do not wish to have their one-dimensional approach to poetic forms unsettled. The spoken word movement in the Eastern Cape has always been a feature in what Pius Rimu coined as orature, the way we use words and images in an artistic way for the purposes of amusement and enlightenment. It has always been a joy to come across poetry that engages the public in such a way. It is a kind of poetry that should not and cannot be suffocated or consumed in seclusion because it is intended for interactivity, conversation, dialogue. At the same time, I am aware that all poetry is performative. The very act of committing words to paper in such a way that the sentences sing is a performative act, sort of like a speech act. I suppose this is why most time you hear literary people talk of musicality in relation to prose or poetry they regard with, high esteem. Historian, academic, and poet Kamau Bradwhite speaks of the ability to make words on the page sing in your ear. He speaks of performative activity or activeness, a sort of livingness of the word on page, when he proclaims that he does not perform. It's his poetry that does the performing or performance. Language's ability to perform, writes critic and poet Natali Meki, is variable and site-specific. Mind, ear, eye, air, page, and other sites conducing to particular powers and effects. So you hear, we can and should overlook boundaries. We actually can remove the term performance from the premises of theatricality, props, and our disposition for the dramatic. One of the valuable things we learn from orature, the oral tradition of which spoken word poetry is a feature, is the need to constantly cultivate and encourage the act of being intentional in our reading and in our hearing in order to decipher both the amusement and wisdom this urban poetic form offers. As social historians, cultural commentators, or literary critics, we are asked to be intentional with what the poet and critic Taban Lolong calls, and I quote, the fine art of defining meanings behind idioms, symbols, images, myths, and I close. In order to benefit, of course, from what and how we are reading and hearing. In the following section of this reflection, I wish to offer a snippet of this world I encountered in the early 2000s. We are gathered here this afternoon to talk about the notion of staging history. The expression itself raises a couple of simple yet necessary questions that need to be posed. Whose history are we to stage? Who is staging this history? Which voices are allowed to enter into the processes of history making? Who decides what is captured and what is contained in the historical record, which in effect creates the idea of the canon? How do we read the archive despite all its biases? We must realize that there's a great gap in the existing archive, an archival absence. Having acknowledged this fact, how do we read the archive while making room for what is excluded and has been omitted? I use the contested term archive to speak specifically to the dimension of what makes historical material recognizable, acknowledgeable, recordable as literary history, while the unaccounted for material is rarely, if ever, consulted or considered in our discussions on poetry. Orientations have their significance in the investigation of literary history. Writes the Greek poet Odysseus Elitis, is true. Orientations are essential too in the construction of any particular literary history. I hope to raise questions of how to account for what exists and chooses to come alive only in marginal spaces of recall and remembrance, spaces outside the text, spaces such as shebeens, bus shelters, and stay and corner store ciphers, music events. Who's responsible for recording and staging the history and the strands of poetic forms displayed at the Urban Connection, bringing to the cipher, the Grassroots Festival, One Blood, Soul Clap sessions, all gatherings that occurred in Euthanic or Dispatch, all these spaces, or what scholar Paul Gilroy calls an alternative public sphere, were often populated with voices that have come to shape our aesthetic tastes and political desires and attitudes. I first got, just to change the kind of the note of the whole thing, I first got involved with the spoken word movement in the early 2000s, and at the time in the Bay, ciphers and spoken word poetry shows at the Opera House were quite common. A large number of poets from all over the Eastern Cape were part of these monthly events, and I wish to remember and recall them here. Kubla Five Senses, Black Seed and Black Sun, the late Ming and the Black Permanent Mark. I also want to salute the amazing and extensive work of Abantu, Ohave, Lokshin natives, the Abattoir, Master Key Genius, Moses, Ribkor, Hisham, Kashan, the Upset, Spheric Box, Silent Noise, Optophones, True Sight Music, Shades of Blackness, among others who were household names in the then Port Elizabeth poetry and hip-hop scene. Having been part of this world, I have witnessed and I'm here to attest to the prophetic power and poetic pyrotechnics of these poets, poet MCs whose work is driven by their goal to organize and interpret public opinion. I borrow the two terms, organizing and interpreting, from the late anthropologist and social critic Archie Maveje, who in an essay titled The Role of the Bard in a Contemporary African Community, suggests that Iimbongi, the poet of social conscience, is the organizer and interpreter of the opinion of the public, that the poet is a mediator between the public and those in power. This type of poetry I'm referring to is called the poetry of social conscience. I contend that 3 spoken word groups or rap crews active in the early 2000s typify this poetry, and their history and strand of poetry is yet to be appraised. The first group is Khululekani, a trio that came out of Motherwell's ghetto youth uprising, a movement that claimed to be the descendants of the black Hebrew Israelites, of course influenced by the teachings and practices of Ben Ami Ben Israel, the spiritual leader and founding father of the African Hebrew Israelite movement. Khululekani's music, truth music as they termed it, is full of fire against debauchery, full of insight and inspiration, full of religious iconography and pan-Africanist imagery, full of spiritual health awareness messages, Bible quotes, life advice. The music has its share of moralizing and proselytizing. Most importantly, though, the poetry in their music proved to be a statement of condemnation of what they called sinful life. Above all, they encourage survival in the midst of subjection. Among the prominent figures from this movement, the Ghetto Youth Uprising, are, of course, we know Dangaje and Abantu, who Dangaje dropped an album a while back, Ikambani Kama, in 2005, and at the same time, Abantu was circulating his Bantu Stand EP, some of us bootlegged it. So the second group, or crew, or movement is Smack Lounge Camp, and they were based in Zwide Township, a movement founded by, among others, Aphiwe Mahola, the son of the late poet and novelist Mzi Mahola. Their approach to poetry was heavily influenced and modeled on the Wu-Tang Clan, with different chambers within the movement, or as they call the units, camps. They released a double album, a double tape titled Power Lines Project Volume 1. It is a potpourri of different styles, flows, topics. They rhyme in an English many considered bombastic, quite experimental in their lyrical techniques and thematic exploration. Their music, as a collective, or rather as individuals in a collective, explore dark themes with their songs and lyrics ranging from the self-referential posture of horrorcore raps to assuming the status of social commentator, espousing black consciousness-inspired rhetoric. During other moments, of course, in the songs, the poet MC turns into a critic who addresses social issues such as personal vendettas and township criminality, as in the song by Ming called Lost and Found. It's a pity that I don't have enough time to play some of these songs here. So you will have to, since we're speaking about poetry, you will have to kind of bear with me and just trust me, trust the word of mouth. That's the oral tradition. The third group is Thunya Zohlanga. Messengers of the Nation, loosely translated. The duo is from Zazulwana. They are the closest contemporary thing to isiXhosa folklore. In saying this, I am considering Jeff Opland's statement that the work of Iimbongi, the poet of social conscience, operates in the domain of the folklore. They released an album in 2006 titled Ingqondo Zenkcubeko. You can translate it loosely as Intellectuals of Culture. In this album, cannibals, isithunzela, and trickster characters borrowed from isiXhosa folk tales populate the lyrics. Age-old proverbs, tongue twisters, puns, riddles, songs, legends, myths, and idioms are employed and deployed in a different context. This one, so that our contemporary moment and the country's constitution are subjected to critical scrutiny and regarded with great suspicion. The duo is simultaneously analytical and speculative. In their sonic world, the hilarious and the tragic, the freaky and the frightening, the sacred and the profane, the personal, the cultural, the imaginary, and the national share the same space as evident in their songs, Abantu, Imizamo, Insindabadala, Ihambo, and so forth. These three examples I have provided are not exhaustive, and I do not use them as sole barometers of aesthetic and political aspiration. Rather, I employ them as examples of what I call historical awareness or critical intentionality. If the spoken word and rap tradition has inherited anything from the tradition of being Iimbongi, it is this historical awareness and critical intentionality. They have taken what has been bequeathed to them by the ancestors and have adapted it to the contemporary experience. The theme of this workshop is essential so far as it compels us to stop, look back, reflect, and examine the past in ways that resist revisionism and romanticism. In his essay, Poets Must Be Everywhere, poet and memoirist Xhosa Iimbongi writes, and I quote, "Poetry that is not restless, that does not reflect the streets and the urban poor, poetry that has no time for rural settlement and the youth must be strung off air and must suffocate." Here I modify Nyenziwa's statement and I say, poetry that is restless, that reflects the streets and the urban poor, populate the spoken word community. The conflict, or what Nyenziwa rightly refers to as the perennial war going on in poetry, has always seemed to me rather unnecessary, uninteresting, for it seeks to sustain a hierarchy in which other forms of poetry making are delegitimized and their practitioners discouraged. But this need not be the case when poetic forms inform and enrich one another. However, this can only be achieved by taking seriously poet Thabo Tijana's injunction to look beyond dichotomies. Let us imagine that poetry is a complicated castle with many rooms. Each room has its own language, baggage, influences, idiosyncrasies, cadences, desires, breakthroughs, and shortcomings. Thus, to speak of escape poetry as though it is one entity that can be easily categorized and studied is not only dangerous, but misleading and unhelpful. For even if we were to categorize the poetry according to regions, we would still fail to account for each and every poetic strand and its accoutrements. Concerning this perennial war, this tension between spoken word poetry and literate poetry, I am reminded of the late poet and novelist Mzi Maola, who was completely and openly antagonistic towards the spoken word tradition. Countless times in several writing workshops in the Bay, he dismissed the work as an abstraction, as hip-hop poetry, accused the style of superficiality or superfluity for not adhering to the image's aesthetic mode in which he wrote. Of course, we usually laughed it off because despite our hip-hop inspired expressive outlet, we thought it was cool that he still termed what we wrote and rapped as poetry, even though perhaps a different kind of poetry, a lower level of poetic expression. One wonders what he would have made of Charles Olson's notion of open field or composition by field. The open verse whose central concern is not rhyme, meter, or sense, but an emphasis on listening and breadth. But as I try to argue, each poetic form has its own language that the reader or hearer has to learn first in order to understand and appreciate that particular form of poetry. I consider it valuable to have been given this opportunity to reflect on different perspectives on poetry that populate our contemporary literary culture, how critics, cultural commentators, and poets from different strands have, over the years, responded to the widespread spoken word culture in South African urban context. Attending to this can reveal and highlight whose history and which poetic strand has been privileged, and how and why those who benefit from this privilege find it unproblematic to antagonize spoken word poetry without any serious critical attention. Perhaps the most extreme antagonistic attitude is to be found in the academic and poet David Tyfield's critical response to the poet and performer Nathalia Molebatsi's anthology. It was called We Are, a collection of poems by different South African poets who identify as spoken word artists. Now, Tyfield's review article is curiously titled In Remembering of Stephen Watson, A Legacy at Risk. In the article, Tyfield rubbishes the collection and uses Stephen Watson's work as a barometer and blueprint we all should aspire to. Stephen Watson's work, he argues that there is a failure in language, an unwellness, grammatically speaking, that has infected the poets featured in the anthology. They fall short of what he calls linguistic well-being. A number of people responded to Tyfield's piece, a piece which proved itself to be marked by a demand on his part to see linguistic propriety in poetry supposedly embodied by the work of Stephen Watson. Tyfield's emphasis on towing the line of academically accepted and canonically approved standards of poetry making as opposed to new thought, invention, imagination is striking. The South African novelist and poet Andrew Miller responded to Tyfield, and I think his response was on point, but unfortunately, I cannot recite all his points here, but if you really wish to follow the debate, the title of his article was called Poetry Matters, Even When You Do Not Like It. That's the title of it. In conclusion, I would like to share with you an important question that has been guiding my talk. In the article here, it is safe to assume nothing at all. Aesthetics and the impasse of South African poetry criticism. The poet and literary critic Kelvin Soul poses an important question concerning the impossibility of the task of developing grammars that fully account for what he calls the various multifold manifestations of poetry in South Africa. He asks, and I quote, "Does such a thing as South African poetry exist?" I'm asking, can we as critics tell poets with good faith that we have a sufficiently general and embracing system of analysis and apperception to enable us to discuss the various multifold manifestations of poetry in South Africa from a relatively assured basis, so that we can begin to widen our readings and judgments from an incooperative position, close quote. We do not possess, of course, soul takes the position that I take, which is the position of no, okay? Of course, soul takes the position that I take, which is the position of no. We do not possess enough resources to begin to deal with the vastness and variations within poetry in South Africa. The point then becomes, if we do not have the grammar, if we have yet to develop the languages that would allow us to speak about these various multifold manifestations of poetry in South Africa, then I suggest that we narrow our scope and take Soul's question and apply it to the East Cape poetry. Do we have such a thing as East Cape poetry? Or rather, do we agree that we have many manifestations of poetry in the East Cape with different histories and trajectories? If our answer is yes, then a critical language needs to be developed in order to read or hear and understand and evaluate each specific poetic manifestation in its fullness. In order to do this, however, we need to move away from the ongoing belief that only some forms of expression count as poetry. And thank you.
I have absolutely no words. Unathi Slasha has managed to merge worlds that we more often than not think are not necessarily defined or coordinated or put together. He has managed to put the urban movement of rhythm and poetry alongside the academic views and scopes of scholars. That in itself is a feat unmatched. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Because you have taken people like myself, who's a poet herself, who's hosted sessions, much like the urban exchanges, the grassroots. I lived in that time. We all had different sessions. There were blue basements in New Brighton. There were different narratives, and you've taken me back to a time of poetry where it was super alive in the Bay. But poetry in Port Elizabeth, in the Black context, did not just live on its own. It lived with rhythm and poetry. Because rap and poetry were one and the same, and there was never an ostracization of the other. So I thank you for that recollection, because in the session that I was in the breakaway, we had a young man who listened to music, and myself and my dear teacher were going, oh, who's this now? You know, there's such a disconnect between ourselves and the youth that we often enough miss both worlds. And what you've managed to do in your speech is bring different worlds and different ages into one particular view. In my time as a poet, when we were thinking about publishing, because we were just spoken word poets sitting in a house, you know, trying to figure out what's next from just doing in a small house, reciting together, what was the next step. And one of the names that came out of my township was Upungqele Sinyezu, who stood out, and he was a publisher at that time. He published Ikotas, and that published a lot of other poets and other authors and essayists. It was a publication that was fundamental because it was coming out of New Bright, where we were from. As young as we were like, oh my God, that's what we want to do. How do we do it? And we're lucky enough to sit in a room with people who are movers and shakers and people who are dreamers, but not just dreaming, truly effecting their dreams into action to inspire the rest of us to be able to stand on podiums, much like Unathi Slasha, and give our views and be noted as worthy of views that are made to be listened to by the world. So I thank you. I am going to hand over now. I'm going to ask my dear help to kindly give us another mic for the respondents so that they can give their views. Oh, you can't? Okay. If I go? Okay. There we go. No, this can't hear that one.
Okay, good afternoon, Vituna. You know what? Okay, I grew up in Alice in a small. No, it's not. My village is not small. It's one of the biggest villages. There was a Makoti there that had. That she just gave birth whilst the husband was in the mines. And the child kept on crying and crying and crying until mother-in-law said, "Man, come Tate, just take him, Makoti, and talk to him." Umakoti took the child out of the house in the midnight, and then she recited a poem. That was a spoken word. Yes, because she was praising this child, actually telling him that you do not even belong here. Your father is in Cape Town. When I'm being a Mawawa, you don't belong here. This is Amajwaha.
Yeah.
You see? And at that moment, there were emotions. She was carried with emotions. In poetry, that's what it does. There are emotions that will always carry, and there will always be that message that is going along, that is conveyed. Maybe a message from the ancestors, or a message to the ancestors. Listen to this. Utata, the head of the family, when things are not shaping well in the household, he goes to the kraal right at the entrance, and then he will call upon, appease the people that he believed that are there. That is a spoken word. That is where the power is. And when I came here, I saw that I've been to the shows. I remember I was once adjudicating there in the Opera House, because there were groups and groups. And I remember there was a time that we were not seeing eye to eye with one of the panelists, because I was asking her, what is it that you actually want from them? Because here we are talking of authenticity, there is stage presence that we need, and there is also message. What is it actually? Because each time I'm coming with, I remember there were students from these colleges, that were competing there. And there was a very slight difference, because they were more of traditional poets. They were praise singing, unlike the urban poets from here. You understand? And I even asked Mr. Ngonyama, I said, no, I think you must talk to the teachers, ask them. It's either he divides, there must be two sections, and then we know exactly what we're doing. Because these that are coming, I remember there was that boy that was even the regalia, he was representing a Xhosa man that was speaking, but actually he was in front of us. But you could see that he was taken away by the word that were coming out of his mouth. There is power in spoken word, but the problem is what happened why were you refined? Was there maybe, was it refined? Was it, what actually happened? Because now there isn't that power that was carried there. Maybe was it because there were instruments? Okay. During Word Fest, Mkiva, yes. Umkiva, he was so powerful. Umkiva, he was powerful that it was very, very difficult for you to ignore. But when Umkiva added instrument to compete with his voice, that was where the problem came. I don't think there was any more of Mkiva after there was instruments added. There are voices that does not need anything to accompany, especially when a black man is standing, representing my people, me, a Xhosa woman. And then it's either there must be a drum beat, no guitar. Then at least now I will be able to say, yes, you are there. I mean that Umkiva is the example that I know that after he added some rhythm, a strange rhythm and strange voices and instruments, it just died. Again, coming now again to the question, maybe one will answer me. What actually happened? Why is there no noise again? Why has it died? Because I don't see. It's very, very rare that I hear Mawawa. It's very rare that I hear Udongadala. I do not mean that you must go and go up and down, ne? But why is it that now you have died? What happened to that voice? What happened to that picked? What happened to that chosen a voice of a black man? I thank you.
Thank you. Before Upudulisi responds, I'm going to do a few remarks. I think Uma Munombumezo Buzani is asking such a pivotal question. It is a question in this era, as a poet myself, you have poets, I'm going to say it in Gesintu. In Isintu, Sinembongi Yomthonyama, which is subsequently dumbed down or dubbed down into a praise poet. It is a spiritually invoking poet, a poet that gets messages from the divine. And she mentioned something that always boggles me when I go to these competitions in high schools. You'll go to these competitions and the kids all want to be Iimbongi Yomthonyama. And you sit there and you go, I'm not moved because it is a put-on performance. And all these kids are taught to be this one voice. And some of them are that, even when they're not. And you wonder, how then do we teach our kids that it is okay to have your own voice? Because even Iimbongi Yomthonyama, Inembongi Yomthonyama Yosiba, there are poets who are written wordsmiths who are called to be spiritual advisories. There are those as well. There is no difference, because how do you define the voices in your head and the things in your spirit that make you want to speak a truth that others are silencing? Right? Some of us write, some of us just siyadanduluka. We walk into a room and we say it. And this is a narrative as well that I think Unatis Lasha was touching on in his speech, that how do these worlds meet and how do we preserve the authenticity of those that do, and allowing space for everybody to rise. As I hand over to Ubunqule Sinyazo.
Thanks a lot. Thanks, Sissy. Yeah, one or two things. With your permission, can I ask,
Yes, you may.
Babes, Sis Babalo, can you please come forward, man? She'll help me with reading
Okay.
some of the text. Yeah.
No worries.
Yeah.
Definitely.
No, thanks a lot for that. Yeah, you can give her a mic so that, like, she'll read now.
No, definitely. She can come stand here. Sis Babalo, ngaza.
I think maybe it's not a gimmick really, but it's an illustration of some of the performative elements that Slasher was referring to in poetry. That all poetry, has the instinctual capacity to be performed, to entertain, to do all these kind of things. Quickly, I would like to say I'm not really, maybe I could have misunderstood a little bit the topic, but again, that's not really that crucial, What I would like to say maybe before I read is to mention that my understanding of what has been happening in terms of poetry, history, and how it's been recorded and how it has emerged, in our lives, and the value that is assigned, to poetry, the different readings that can be derived from poetry. It mainly stems from very few individuals, it's not expansive, my understanding. I seem to be, it appears like to me it's easier to understand the wider world, if I can put it like that, or maybe to understand the province through understanding one or two or three people, Those one or two or three people help me to understand what is going on. Yeah, so maybe it's a different way of approaching the same thing, how we arrive at the truth, Like sometimes you can arrive at the truth by looking and hearing the voice of one angel, who sings to you, or rather than a multiple different voices which are speaking at the same time. So, and I think I've been lucky in a way in my life to have met people who have made such an impactful effect, influence in my life, that they liberated me, I think that's the liberation that we're seeking. Sometimes you need to be liberated by someone who's sitting right next to you. And Mzimaola has played that role to me. So I think I'm trying to argue in Mzimaola to this discussion, and the powerful role that he has played to many poets in the province. So reading this as a dedication to his memory, and the continual impact that his work plays in shaping poetry in the province, even today. So I'll ask Babalwa to read the poems of Mzi. These are just small excerpts as we go along, and hopefully from this we can make extrapolations on what is happening in the province in terms of like staging poetry, the history of poetry, how the various actors have come to fit themselves in and defined the canon and what is important and what we should understand to be the essential literature in the province. You can follow from here. Slasha, I don't have a copy for you. I'm sorry, my brother. Now, this is Mzimaola, a soldier of poetry. Mzimaola was born in Lushington, near Hogsback in the Eastern Cape. When he reached high school age, he left permanently for Port Elizabeth. He became one of a handful of poets from the rural hinterlands who captured the strained relationships of the countryside, placing that haunted and scorched landscape side by side with the modern westernized world, a world hell-bent on annihilation and doing away with the weaker nations of the earth and the earth itself. There were many rural villages in South Africa and throughout Africa for that matter that the colonists never fully penetrated and conquered. The natives of these villages continued with their cultures and beliefs unchanged for millennia. Their reading of their surroundings revealed to them that amongst men and women there are powerful agents and spirits able to control thunderbolts, and magical people can control the heavens and the rain, and converse freely with the spirits. Traditional beliefs were so pervasive as to make the task of enslaving the local native a daunting mission. It was worrying to the enterprising colonists to find men and women of dark hue making libations and talking to their ancestors. Their immediate thought was to incinerate these cultures and convert them to Christianity, to the Western God, an emaciated figure on a cross. But Africa survived in the tongues of its Iimbongis, poets and magic men who practiced a transgressive culture that withstood suppression even in urban areas like the city of Port Elizabeth.
The question. When we were young, we didn't ask why people threw stones into the river before they crossed in the evening, why we were warned never to point a finger at the sky. We never asked why elders panicked when a tree daisy loitered into the yard. We didn't ask why hunters turned home if a snake or liguan crossed their path, why peasants refrained from plowing or digging holes till a dead person was buried.
Reading Maola's poems makes me think about how South African poets and artists have engaged with the language of lyrical beauty. In the 60s and 70s, direct engagement with the language of protest was used by poets and playwrights to expose the damning nature of apartheid. But for poets to tell of the nuances of the exploitation of the earth and the steady growth of oppression in the world, we should be engaging with the lyric as a way to understanding. When we remove the lyric from the lives of people, we allow those who hate humankind to bury the beauty of the slave. We should not be surprised when those who have buried underground begin to hate themselves. Young poets often ask me what they must do to become a good writer. I tell them that what distinguishes a good writer is the power to reinvent the world through imagination. He sees a hidden building, a world not discernible to the naked eye. He hears hidden voices, feels extrasensory tremors. His task is to establish a bridge between what thrives quietly in his head and the real physical world standing in front of him. He must not escape into that world of indescribable feelings, pearly buildings and huge gardens, but go in there and quickly move out. Step back into the physical world where men and women climb mountains, drive sleek cars, smoke cigars, and oppress the miserable and unfortunate. The artist must bring back what he has seen: stars, canyons, mountains, blackbirds, green dastardly buildings, melodious thunderstorms, black winds. Bring this back into the physical world to astonish all men. Bring that imagined world into the grimy realities of ordinary life. Poets are often baffled by this long and sad relationship between their imagination and the real world. Mzimaola came from a natural environment in which a peasant agricultural economy still continued despite the efforts of the apartheid government to destroy it. He brought all he had absorbed from peasant life, transformed by his imagination, to the townships in PE. As a resident of New Brighton/Blawa and later of Sweden, he came face to face with the lack of innocence, the loss of morality that pervades life in the townships. He saw that surviving in the urban areas exposed township folks to the ravages and brutality of a system that chokes the human soul.
Impossible bridge. I phoned for an MP, a former bosom friend. His secretary asked, in connection with what? It punctured my ego. I felt my manhood shrinking. I said, give him my message. Tell him that poisonous mushrooms sprout under rotten logs. If he asks for my name, say it was an angered poet. If you can do that for me, I'll be okay. But quick to add, she said, and lizards don't fly for their food, they crawl. She hung up.
His recording of the lives of peasants and poor farm workers in the Eastern Cape contains the strongest insights about the cosmological and ecological outlook of African communities. His respect for African values is demonstrated in poems such as There Was No One, Who Killed Nokiki, No Amen, and many others. Africans strongly believe that you reap what you sow. Umntu uvuna okulimileyo. Those who practice evil are eaten by bears. Batyiwa ziibhere. This reading of the world surfaces numerous times in Maola's poems, as in the final stanza of Who Killed Nokiki.
There was no defense against those raining blows. The killers demanded she return Nokiki. They didn't know that one more death would break many hearts, even their own.
Whatever harm and injury you do to a fellow brother or sister will come back one day to haunt and destroy you. The appearance of evil destabilizes nature and the earth, and reprisals for this injury will restore the system to its balance. The natives had so much faith in this cosmological balance that their sighs could not be crushed by the colonists. They felt sorry for them and could not wait long enough for the day when the wrath of the ancestors will be unleashed and the invaders will pay heavily for their moral transgressions.
In memoriam, Sizwe Kondile, with needles of death, they punctured his life. Et Nkomati, signed for the soul. A gun salute sealed the deal with the devil. They were laughing when they set him ablaze, an offering to their gods. They were dancing while they brayed alongside, starting the fire from his ashes, eating and drinking with joy, a satanic communion to their God.
The moral outrage Mzee felt against apartheid was no less than what he felt about the detestable moral decay in his home township. What greatly dismayed him was finding the same inhuman tendencies in black people, even his neighbors and friends in Port Elizabeth.
I entered one of the shacks bordering a cemetery. Its makeshift furniture suddenly seized my eye. The frame of the table was a classroom desk, and the thick maroon tabletop was a headstone, a dead person's soul and final possession, the name probably etched on the other side. For many months, this image lingered in my mind. I said to myself, we have lost all dignity when we loot even graves.
His rural childhood experiences never escaped his consciousness and intellectual life. Everything was viewed against those earlier moral lessons. This was the imagined world he brought to his life and his poetry. He revered the life of the rural peasant and judged the urban native harshly for what he felt was tarnishing the African character. Even his activities as an Umkhonto Wesizwe soldier were grounded by his rural upbringing and consciousness. At the same time, as someone who risked his life as a fighter for liberation, Mzee was shocked to find Africans had forgotten their history. He saw that there were people who refused to acknowledge the turmoil of apartheid, insisting that nothing untoward happened in the country.
A chain of lies. When people say to you without making any apologies that apartheid was a mistake, don't listen. When they say forget the past, make haste. Open the book of history, tattered, bloodied, and dirty.
I have always felt strongly and sadly that any writing that pretends that the scars of our past are irrelevant will be blown away by the winds. Poetry must be rooted in the fallen blood of the nation. It flows in the dirty streets, it lies low in the motels, and is often marked by low lives. It snuggles warmly on cold beds, and sinks deep in the purple marrow of our bloody nation. As Fela Kuti once remarked, a nation's deaths always bring a new vigor for life. And Mzee records many deaths in his poems. Poets are angels of the soul. They guard the human spirit even as they express its turbulence. Poetry can help us to discover the small battered paths that bring us closer to our noblest deaths. This is what I gather when I read Mzee Maola's work. Thanks.
I don't know if any of you have words or comments. This next session is a session where we invite the audience to give us 1 or 2 words as to commentary or questions that they have for our respondents and our keynote speaker. I'm just not sure if I'm going to be able to come down and give somebody a mic. Can somebody please help me with a mic? Can we also indicate with a show of hands? We can only take about 3 to 4 hands. 30 seconds, please, everyone. Yeah.
Mr. Slasher, did I hear you correctly that you quoted Nyezwa, right? There's a piece there in which you quoted Nyezwa. And did I hear that sentence correctly, that sentence is agitating and advocating, perhaps arguing for a suffocation of a poetic form, a killing, a silencing of poetry?
I also heard you quoting poets like Stephen Watson. Yeah, we all know what he advocated for. He wrote his entire PhD thesis on aesthetics versus politics, up to a point of concluding that, yeah, black poetry equals to 0, and we know that he paid for that dearly. Maybe not a question. He happened to be my supervisor at UCT for an MA in creative writing. And the irony of it all, he's the one who really taught me how to write a modern poem in English. So, what do you make of that?
Okay. Would you like to respond?
Yeah.
No, there's also one at the front as well. Okay, our keynote speaker didn't quite get the question. Which one? The first one.
Oh, with the first one.
I mean, I thought you quoted. And I thought in that sentence, right, an argument was being made for a suffocation of a poetic form, right? And I was going for that. I'm trying to understand if, in fact, I heard you or heard the sentence correctly, that a silencing is called for there, right? A murdering of poetry.
Thank you.
I have, I would say, a response or maybe a question to Umama Nompumezo. She mentioned that there's something that happened, or there was a shift that happened when poetry was being accompanied by instruments. I found that one very interesting because I'm one of the poets who usually infuse instruments when I am actually performing. In the nature of poetry, as in my understanding, a poem is supposed to stand on its own, whether it's written down, someone is reading it, or I am performing it. But now, with the generation that, of poets that we are today, we have encountered a short concentration span, if we can call it that way. So if I am sometimes reciting a poem, I would feel like I am losing part of my audience. So when I incorporate music within my performance, I am trying to engage each and everyone that is in the room. And I can confirm that it does have an effect on me as someone who's performing, but on the other hand, it does kill the performance of, it does kill the nature of poetry. But it is to, I don't know what to put in words, but it is to incorporate or
to engage everyone?
Yes. But we have that problem. And on the other hand, we have like the terms of economic. Sometimes when you put in a quote, let's say you're being booked by a certain event organizer, and then you bring up a quote, and they would mostly have questions that, how can you quote such a large amount of money if it's just you? So in such cases, we get to incorporate instruments. But I do agree with you that it does kill poetry.
We have somebody in the front. Is there a hand? There's a hand that's right in the front.
Let me help you.
Mandibulele nami. Mntakasilatsha mandibulele bhuti. Ngakumbi thethele izantsi. Ayaqhabhuza le. Mandibulele ngakumbi xa ukhankanya umama umgqwetho phakathi kwezingqangqarhama zosiba uzikhankanyileyo. Mama umgqwetho was one poet, strong, fearless, and she spoke truth to power, and I like that about her. Even during when the ANC was not in power, or political organizations who were fighting for the liberation of South Africa. I remember one of her poems, 2 lines, the slogan, Africa Mayibuye. And she asked, Niti Africa maibuye, makubuye nina. If you say Africa must return, you are the people that must return before Africa returns. Thetha ke ne leadership isizwe at that point in time. Now we have a problem, not a problem as such, but we have writers or poets that wants to please power instead of writing truth or inform or educate or share as prophets of, not of doom, but prophets. Writers are supposed to be prophets, soothsayers, people who are sent for abathunywa lisholoku. Or if you are a church person, umoya oyingcwele, Holy Spirit, uthi mandithethe moya oyingcwele. So nisholoku, the ancestral spirit manages you. Now authority, government or establishments that we have, even who are managed by us, Africans or whoever who belongs to us, they want us to dance to their tune. Hence now you have poets, as a fisher, your fishing poet, the poets, they want to be seen. Sell out poets. Poets, tender poets. You know, we have London Flazi. Now we'll go to Omgweto, in our work, and we want to copy them, but we do not do what they were doing. You see? So, ndabulela uzenayo uthethe ngoludwe uthetha ngalo umzi uxolisa inyezwa quoting uBramzi. And I love his novel, Forgotten Bastards, because we are, and that you must tell, we are not bastards, we still live, you know. So I'm not saying that if you want to fish you go there and fish, but when we listen to you, you want to hear the message. I thank you.
Can we please get the mic to Sister Kwalo in the front?
So I wanted to touch on what was said about incorporating poetry with music. So personally, I see poetry as a form of expression, as well as music being the same, another form of expression. So how do two different forms of expression used together kill each other? That's my question.
Thank you. I think I'm going to stand because nobody can see me. I want to respond to Unati's Unati's speech when he spoke about the argument between spoken word and the written word. I came to this workshop yesterday, Kinelo and I, when we were discussing everything about the workshop, and I remember myself looking at the program and realizing that what we came here to do, we've been given a needle and a thread, and it's about being able to find the knots between the page and the stage. So with that being said, I'm sitting here and I'm remembering that we grew up listening to recitations. Zindoni ezia gamahlungulu enzantoni alelonke. That was spoken word being passed from generation to generation, that every child that is at CriSHET can recite that, and everybody in the house understands that. So there was always a room for spoken word, and there was always a room for written word. But we came throughout primary school with spoken word, and when we got introduced to poetry as a written form, then it started to filter and had people who could write poetry, who could follow the rules, who could understand sonnet, who could understand the rules of academic poetry. But it doesn't kill the people who come with spoken word, and who also within spoken word follow. If you listen to my poetry, it's got a lot of rhythm, it's got a lot of alliterations. As much as I don't follow all the academic rules, but there are some rules that I follow. So I do believe that they can stand. It was never a matter of having one, but it is a matter of you become either or. Lastly, I remember in the mid-2000s, we got a sponsor from the SABC. It was led by Poetic Soul, and she collected all poets that she could find of that era. And I remember us being unable to answer from Utatu Zolayeye as to what is it that we want. Because now here is the sponsorship, here is the support, but what do we want? How do we grow as spoken word artists? It's very easy for writing poets to know that what they want, they can gather and put together an anthology, and they can publish, and they can approach the Department of Education, or they can publish privately, or they can sell. That is clear. But for spoken word artists, what do you become? Unomaza, who wrote Unomaza? Do we know who wrote Unomaza? Intombi enjani? Intombi emhlophe? But we all understand Unomaza. We are all still reciting Unomaza. So I do believe that with us being unable to answer the question, I remember us going to the studios of SABC, we recorded our poetry, and then after recording, coming back to the point, after recording, it was like poetry cannot be silent on radio. It needed backup music. And then some of us were struggling to follow the background music. Does the music follow me, or do I follow the music? So it's a whole new conversation with regards to spoken word artists and instruments and music, and whether or not we can. Last year, 2 years ago, I was able to incorporate my poetry with jazz. For the first time, I was comfortable with sound. But before then, I couldn't for the life of me. So I'm just trying to say that with this argument, there's so much room to groom spoken word artists, as well as the same way that we are raising written word artists. Thank you.
Thank you. And we are not taking any more questions. Unfortunately, we're running out of time. I need to give to my panel to respond.
Oh, thank you, people. Yeah, it's always confusing for me speaking in public, you know. But yeah, brother, yes, I did go to Mr. Nyenzo there from essay in New Coin. But I mean, beneath those lines I've quoted, I mean, the whole central idea in that piece is that poetry must be everywhere, right? At schools, at libraries, and whatnot. But there's a certain kind of poetry that I think Nyenzo argues are against there in that piece, which is like poetry that is not a representative of the environment in which it finds itself, you know. So, like, yeah, I don't know if you get that point. But on the part of Stephen Watson, yeah, well, that kind of debate about, because yeah, he did make the statement that there were no black poets and whatnot, which I think it was a ridiculous statement, especially coming from a person who cannot speak the languages of the land. I'm saying this actually fully aware of the long debate that's been going on in South Africa, right? Because this, what I brought here now, is just actually an offshoot of a huger debate that's been happening in the country. It's just an offshoot, but it all is very perennial in the sense. It comes up again and again and again and again. The biggest debate is that of between W.B. Vilakazi and of course H.I.E. Lomo, and we know that with the Vilakazi, right? He was doing this experiment of trying to fit in isiZulu poetry within the framework of a sonnet. And of course we know that was a catastrophe. A lot of critics actually were not very good towards him because they said that kind of poetic project failed. And there was this big debate that was staged between him and H.I. Lomo. And then H.I. Lomo, of course, he's the one, I think, one of the greatest South African poets, actually, in terms of the epic, you know. He's got this like long poem about the mountain somewhere in, I just forgot the name of it now. But the debate there was always been on the level of aesthetic, right? Because, you know, for a long time, a lot of poetry, which was called by some of these white critics now, Soweto poetry, the problem with a lot of white writing was that it is too obsessed with, you know, what Njabulo Ndebele at some point called, you know, the surface signs, the poetry that is obsessed with surface signs, meaning that instead of going beyond the surface, people are, I suppose, they are very kind of well with just remaining on the surface. Surface sign in the sense of like, people will speak about particular moment in our history, which they actually know that it will get some sort of response because everyone can identify with that particular experience they are speaking about. So like the idea of whether spoken word is poetry or not, I don't think that is that interesting for me because, you know, Amiri Baraka has this idea of that where he says thought is more important than art. But I think I disagree with him in that I think thought and art actually, in fact, thought can be transformed into art in that sense. So for me, it's more important, that is the thought more than poetry or in what forms it arrives, you know.
Okay. Nzabulela kuwe kuqala Silizwe ngokuvumelana nami okokuba sorry. Sorry guys, I'm sorry. Let me thank you, Silizwe, for agreeing with me that music can swallow your poetic voice. That's all I was saying. Because, okay, I am talking from a point of being a stage actress. When I'm on stage and I've got this monologue and I've got this character, there is transformation. I transform. You do not see this person. The minute I've got actually, the minute I've got a play that is assigned to perform, and I've got my script, parts of me shed off because I want to be in character. So what is expected? Actually, maybe I was thinking that when you are a poet on stage, there is a kind of transformation. Now when there is instruments that accompany you, something that shared of you, part of you, it just disappears. Otherwise, really, Sister Kwalo, she explained. I understand. Now, coming to one other thing that bothers me as black poets. I write poetry. I've got poems on Voices of Africa. I've read poetry on SABC 1, Voices of Africa. I've got poems with Kota's magazine. I've got poems with literary journal in UNISA. I've got poetry in Yombela, the latest of Professor Msila. Actually, even that anthology is titled after one of my poems. I write poetry. I know what I'm talking about. Now, my take is, why are we not claiming our being? If people are talking about sonnets, they will always go to England. We do have these poems in our anthologies. When people talk about haiku, they will go to Japan. We do write, I do have a haiku that has been approved by Dr. Hleze Kunju, but I don't think anybody knows about it because it's as if it's not our thing. When are we gonna be us in the space that we in poetry? That is just, I'm throwing a question out there, that's all. Thank you.
With that mouthful from our panel, I would like to close the session. But before I do, I'm going to respond with the notion that there are people like myself who are interested in literature and who do podcasts for literature. I am currently a host and a founder for The Coffee Table, which is a Nelson Mandela Bay born podcast. It was born on a radio station and later moved to be a standalone entity. And the sole purpose of such is because I read on Facebook. I stopped writing. It's sad to say, I stopped buying books, but not because I don't want to buy books, but I've realized that there's a culture of writers that write on social media spaces that have a narrative that speaks to the African person and perspective. And most writers, like Nellie Page, Dudu Busani, have started their work on those pages, and Dudu Busani did The Wife. She's a household name, but she began on Facebook. I have mad respect for the culture of writing on any space, be it a till slip, be it on any medium that allows people to venture into the space of collectives much like ourselves, who will then be the people who buy the books. Because we need audiences, and audience development lives in spaces where audiences are. And there are many people who are in this audience, perhaps, who have read on online platforms and are here because those people have nurtured them. So I hope I will continue being a mouthpiece for those who are our writers in the Bay, who give platforms for many a writer to be able to be heard, so that the word can spread and people can understand that there is a vast need, and writing and reading is a culture that needs to be nurtured. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the thought-provoking insights and provocations from our panelists and the questions that were raised in the audience. So now we are moving into a short session where we are going to get some insight, Mr. Brian. It's a facilitated editing session, and Kinewe will also join Mr. Brian, also introducing the Experimental Writing Space website. So, Mr. Brian, you may come up.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay, no problem. That's fine.
Hello. I'm going to try to do one or two things, but very quickly. The theme we've been talking about, transcending boundaries, it's interesting to me. And I'd just like to touch on it briefly because we're talking about transcending boundaries between stage and page, but alas, South Africa is made of boundaries. Apartheid was a philosophy of boundaries. And I have grown up with the privilege of working in northern areas. Then I worked at Fort Hare. And then since I've come back, I've been working for 15 years in Helenvale. I've been privileged to work in amongst many communities. And I think that part of today was not only transcending boundaries between stage and page, but transcending South African boundaries between us, between the young writers and the older writers, between language group and so on. We haven't heard an Afrikaans poet yet, and we're going to ask Shamala to read an Afrikaans poem a bit later from Helenvale. There's a poet who's dead now, Chris Mann, who wrote a poem called The Kite. And the kite is almost his dream, the looking upwards, the vision, getting off the ground. And in Helenvale, you can see the kites, you can see the dreams, and you can see the visions that hang messed up on the wires. So I'm going to talk to you partly about editing, but I also want us to think about the way we edit our own selves, our own personalities, our growth across, our reaching across as South Africans. I work with Anastasia. You can stand up, although you won't see her even if she stands up. Cassie, is Cassie there? Shamala, and Gwendoline is somewhere in the back there, but I work with a group, and Cassie has been with us and Anastasia for about 10 years now, almost. So we've been working together, and one of the things I find in schools is that everyone talks about the failure of reading in our schools, but no one talks about the failure of writing in our schools. We can't read for meaning. Can we write for meaning? And at the end of the year, everybody writes exams. What happens if you haven't been taught to write? And in terms of stage and page, I have had a lot of requests for stage, and I want to say, someone must bring that project. My project is on writing. And I keep to writing because I know it's a lack in our schools. And I try to teach the freedom of writing, and then also one of the most difficult things is taking what you have written and transforming it into something that is better. When we were at school, we were trained to do corrections. Corrections just a mechanical thing. Nowadays, your computer does it for you. It's a mechanical thing. Editing is not just corrections. Editing is building and creating art around the rough work we started with. It's turning that, and you'll see that growing with tears and dreams. There it is there. It's a book that the Helenvale poets put out. Two-way street, growing with tears and dreams, kinderharte, broken living. These are the books that over the years the Helenvale poets have put out, and we do it basically through a very driven process. I work with the poets on what we did this morning, free writing for months. And then later we start collecting, and I've managed, God bless our sponsors, to get a few computers, and then we've teach the kids to type the poems. Typing up is a good editing process. And then we work towards, how did we get the title, Growing with Tears and Dreams? We have a meeting in the group, and we speak. The group comes up with suggestions with titles. The group comes up with the cover pictures. So we make it a group effort. So the working from your own writing. The free writing are called your own writing. We work with that towards published writing, which is where you've looked at it, you've thought about it, you're glad to put it out. Your free writing you might still be a bit hesitant about. And I think that writing has two very important phases for me. The first thing is get the words on a page. That's the first thing. And I like doing that, and I like doing it in a free writing sort of way, where you don't bother about anything. But you don't always want to show that to people. So then you've got to work it towards publication. And over the years, what I've done is I've put together a little sheet. I'm going to hand it out to you now. The way I work on writing is not unique. Khaleesi and I both worked on the course at Rhodes. People do what I do. It's not my method. It's a method. But it's one that works for me. And then I'll give you some what I call free writing pointers. I'm just going to ask if you can hand them back. Okay. While you're doing that, I just want to carry on my reflection. I said with writing for me, writing involves two very important parts. One is getting the words down. And getting it down can be exciting because you can hit a new idea. You can hit a new thought. But I put it aside. I don't work on it immediately. I've got a lot of unfinished business in poems. And then I go back to it and I start doing my editing. And I don't like the word editing because editing sounds technical. I like the word creating or recreating the rough work into a poem. Taking rough words and making it into something that can stand alone and be read. Unati was talking about sometimes in a poem, the performance is in the poem itself. So that when you read a poem, it stands on by itself. And as Unati says, all poetry is performative. I agree with Unati that the distinction between stage and page is really an artificial one. Shakespeare's considered the best writer in English. He wrote for the stage. He was a stage writer. All of the things we quote tomorrow, and that was stage poetry that was written down later. So I don't see the distinction. I would like to bridge it. But as South Africans, I was brought up not being able to speak isiXhosa. I struggled with Afrikaans until I was taught by my compatriots in Helenvale. They laughed me into speaking Afrikaans properly. So I've battled, and as South Africans, some of us battle with different languages, and we've got to, those are part of the barriers we've got to learn. And sometimes the thing about stage is a language thing. People just don't get it. And I think many academics are in that area. So coming to the joyful work of editing. I really love it when I've selected a poem and I said, now I'm going to make something of this. And for me, that is the real writing. And I spend more time in that than the quick thing. And a few pointers that I have put down, and I use this in our classes. So it's not a textbook. You don't have to worry about it. It's just some tips that I give our guys. What words does a poem not need? And quite often if you read through a poem, you'll find many that you can just cross out. Take out every word the poem can live without. Getting rid of unnecessary words is important. Spend time on it. A poem should, and I'm talking about probably a page poem at this point, a poem should be easy to read and concise. Some people try to make their poems complicated. Don't do that. Make them as accessible as possible. Lines. Do the lines end in the right places? I tend to train our writers to end each line with a strong word as they're even writing up. Then it's easier when you're editing. Look at each line. Is it strong enough to stand on its own. You don't want a line that's a filler in a poem. Try and get rid of those. Make each line speak. Are there two short lines that should become one, or is there one long line that should become two? Stanza breaks should be used judiciously. Are they in the right place? And think of them as paragraphs, one thought, one stanza sort of thing. Imagery, I often ask people to start their free writing with description. And I say description, describe, look, smell, hear, because that all develops our imagery in a poem. So when you're editing, does the poem have description? Is there imagery? Does it need more? And sometimes I'll write a poem on the side and marry it to the original poem to put more imagery in while developing an image. But then does the poem hold together well? Does the beginning lead to the end? Does the poem grow or develop? You don't want to have one theme that is the same throughout. You want to build up a poem towards a stronger ending. Often I say to people, look at the first line and then the last line. Do they talk to each other? Is the ending strong? Is your last line strong? Is your last word strong? If they're not, you're going to end reading your poem very weakly. And then I've given prompts to my group this morning, and a wonderful group of writers. I really enjoyed meeting and I'm working with them. But I was saying to them, I'll give you a prompt. That is not the title of the poem. When you've finished your poem, go back and look at the umbrella that holds the poem together. Sometimes it's a new word altogether. It's not in your poem, but it can be the right word to hold your poem in unity. Now, these are just some thoughts. Once you've done the free writing and done the editing, then you've got the worst job in poetry is getting published. And if you manage to get published, it's getting books sold. I think a lot of people think poets have it easy, or some poets have it easy. In South Africa, no poets have it easy. It's a difficult job to get published in journals, published in books, and getting books sold. It's hard work, but it's work we've got to do. And one of the reasons, if I can say, Kenelwa and Kevin, one of the reasons we were talking about having this transcending the barriers session was really to talk about ways we can come together. We can have fairs or fight bookshops or do what we can to help get our poetry on the map. So this is for you to take home and think about. It's not a set of instructions. Embrace what you like. Don't worry about me and the rest of it. And I'll keep editing my life. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Mine is...
Thank you. I forgot to mention the publication.
It's okay. Thank you very much. Mine is just very short to just speak more about the experimental writing space. As Mr. Brian took us through the editing process, you might want to sort of at least, want to walk through the poems that you wrote this morning in the breakaway sessions. Well, the experimental writing space is a publishing platform on the CriSHET website. Works that have been written during the breakaway sessions may be submitted for publication on the experimental writing space. I would really like to speak more about the experimental writing space, but really I just have a short time. So I'm just going to take you through the process of publishing on the website. Essentially, how the publication works is you submit a poem for editing. You submit it through myself, Gineilwe Nadu, and we have 2 editors on the experimental writing space. Oh, fortunate Dwaga, do you want to wave a little bit? We are fortunate Dwaga as well as an editor on the experimental writing space. So poems will be submitted for editing and they will go through another editing process with me and Fortunate. And then poems may be submitted through my email, which is Gineilwe at Nelson Mandela University. At mandela.ac.za. So that is Gineilwe N at mandela.ac.za. Gineilwe is spelled with a capital letter K, and then the rest of the letters are small, so that is Keneilwe, and the N at mandela.ac.za. The next step then from the submitting and the editing will be sending through consent forms, and that's where writers will now give us the right to publish their work through signing their consent forms. And then the work is published on the Nelson Mandela CriSHET website and on the experimental writing space segment. That is it for me for now. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So I think now we're just going to jump straight to the poetry reading and performances that are lined up for today. It's 6 performances, so I'll call them up. We don't have enough chairs up here, so I don't know if you guys are comfortable with sitting on the stage and then coming up when it's your turn to share your work. We have performances from Salt Lake poets, Shanae Williams. If you could come up, please, Shanae. Helen Vale poets, we have Anastasia Williams, I hope I said it right. Oh, you may come up as well. I didn't get that. Sorry people. And then from Imbizo Arts, we have 2 poets, Sister Kwalo and Mr. Henry Lombard. And NMU Poetry Society, we have Unati Chabalala. Language and Literature Department, Uanelisa Mtengwana. Please come up and don't be shy, guys, ne? Of course, I'm not shy, you guys are creatives. This is falling.
Has defeated me. Like it's supposed to be the other way around. Okay, how do you like the mic? Like this? Or do you want to hold? Okay. Here we go.
Hello everyone, I am Shanae Williams. I am part of the Salt Lake Poets. Voyeurs. When you're a poet, your heart becomes an art museum people walk in and out of. Some take the time to admire your portraits, some take the time to admire your walls filled with portraits that display your feelings, statues made of tears, sculptures formed from all the times you've had your heart broken. The exhibit of trees and flowers that scream happiness is rarely visited because something about your haunted secrets calls to them from their glass boxes. When you're a poet, your heart becomes an art museum people walk in and out of. Even when warned not to touch, no one pays any mind and leave their fingerprints on your sacred thoughts. Because when you're a poet, your heart becomes an art museum.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Anastasia Williams, and I am part of the Ellenville in Salt Lake Poets. A mother's prayer and Sarah's prayer to a young girl. My baby, I see myself in your eyes, a bright light shining with possibilities. Your future is waiting like a blank page for you to write your own story. Speak up, my baby girl. Let your voice be heard, like a flower blooming in the sun. Let your spirit grow and your heart be free to explore, discover, and to be yourself. I was silenced, my choices taken away. I was trapped with no way out. But you have a new start, a chance to rise, shine, and flourish. I was treated unfairly, a stage object. You deserve to fly, to be free, and to be yourself. Don't forget where you came from. Don't forget your roots, but be free.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shamila Bosman, and I'm part of the Ellenville Poets. The poem I'm going to be reading to you is an Afrikaans poem called Woorde. Jou woorde maak seer. Dit sny diep wonde waarvan ek jou liefde bevraagteken. Hoekom dan my so diep sny met jou gevoellose woorde? Hoekom dat teenoor my spreek? As ek dink ek doen die regte ding, dan is dit die teenoorgestelde. Terug na die donkerte, terug na die stilte, met vrae sonder antwoorde. Jou woorde was die seerste, dit het wonde oopgesny, woorde van twyfel, woorde van mislukking. Selfs woorde waar ek jou liefde bevraagteken. Waarom die woorde uiter? Jy beteken niks teenoor my. Dit bring twyfel, linderd, brandende seer. Jou woorde breek my, dag na dag. Wat die seerste maak, ek kyk elke dag in jou oë, met die gedagte, dat ek soos niks vir jou beteken. Dis seer, jou wapenlose woorde, bring die bitterende emosie van wraak. Wie is ek? Die eenvoudige mens, wat in stukke gebreek word, deur wapenlose woorde, in die donkerte geïsoleer. Jou woorde los my spraakloos. Geen woorde, net alleenlik stilte. Die geklank van my swaar asemhaling, los gate binne my. Ek is seer. Seer van gewapenlose woorde. Dank je.
Good afternoon. I am not good at poetry introduction. I just like to get on with the business of the day. DP. Phakathi kwamadabi ngamazwe mabini indlela ziyaxananaza lento ngumoya yakufika ngxabalaza lento ngumoya kukho bunqina lomcimbi undenza ixoki ndiphi ngekubandi amamela into enabandi gqitywa luqhobhoko impucuki ndigutya ubuqaba isephi ndikhuphe ezintwaleni yimfundi ndigutya ubuqaba isephi ndikhuphe ezintwaleni imfundi ndivulela ingcango ngoko ke indlebe ezivalekile lamazwe mabini nayakhabana lamazwe mabini nayakhabana ndiphi bathi ndinenkani kaloku mna andazane nalamazwa nkenteze ezindlebeni ubungqina buzana nogqirha bathi lento ilifufunyana bathi ndinamafufunyana bathi ndilifufunyana inzululwazi lomcimbi awubhalwa ngencwadini engcwele inzululwazi lomcimbi awubhalwa ngencwadini engcwele ndiphi ndisenzonzobileni nqana uyazika kukho ntlanzi yakundihlangula thetha ngelizwi ndihambe phezu kwamanzi uyachachamba 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 lo mkhomba kukho mhlanguli ingulo yomoya iyandigqiba ndiphi. My name is Sister Khwalo.
Ndifuna ukuncokola naye ndifuna ngixelele ukuba wemthembe ngantoni uNonkawala ukuba uzomphathela umsila nazi iziphumo zokuhlanzela Afrika kutheni sinokuzimela xa thina igolide nesiliveri phuma kulo wethu umhlaba Afrika thetha ukuba babasentshoni yaboyika kutheni wasuke wabayeka besiphezuzelisa basuka abagula bezenzela umhlaba wakho Afrika usilibele ulele elimagadatha bayolandule lingaba Afrika ababasentshona bakho libala ababasentshona bakubulala Afrika ulele usilibele elimagadatha
Afternoon, everybody. Greetings to you all. When we look at the world today, we often see conflict, uncertainty, and division. Yet here in Africa, we also see resilience, courage, and hope. Africa has always carried the strength of survival and perhaps the wisdom the world needs today. I will read 2 poems today. The first is called When Africa Rises, and the other one is The Tree Beyond the Rooftop. I have a dream, not borrowed from books, nor wrapped in flags waved by foreign hands, but born in the red clay beneath my feet, in the rhythm of drums that echo through generations. I dream of an Africa that stands tall, not as a shadow of others, but as the sun, burning with its own fire, casting its own light. An Africa where minerals do not sail away in silent ships, while our children go to sleep hungry, but stay to build roads, forge steel, power cities, and fuel dreams. I see hands blackened with honest work, crafting futures from the gold beneath our soil. Farming with pride, feeding not only stomachs, but spirits long starved of dignity. The scent of maize in the breeze, the smoke of cattle dung fires, our heritage remains not as nostalgia, but as strength. I hear the voice of Africa, not begging, not bargaining, not whispering, but roaring across oceans with wisdom, with justice, with power rooted in our people. Governments with clean hands and open hearts, leaders who do not steal dreams but plant them. An Africa where a child in Kibera, a farmer in Limpopo, a miner in Katanga, all taste the fruit of the land before the world does. And Africa no longer exports itself to survive, but thrives by keeping its essence whole. We are not broken. We are becoming. And when Africa rises, she will not ask permission. She will not apologize. She will stand, head unbowed, and the world will finally see what was always here, a continent rich not just in resource, but in soul. Then I have the other poem to read. Thank you. The tree beyond the rooftop. I see it rise beyond the rusted seam, above the roof where sirens never sleep. A tree like a prayer, like an old sunbeam that dares to hold the sky while we weep. Its bark is scarred like skin in Hellenvale. Each house is the tale of bullets, blood, and pain. Yet leaves still tremble when the cold winds wail and drip green hope like soft forgiving rain. The branches bend but never break apart. Their silence louder than the gunshots crack. I wonder then, whose breath just left the heart a mother's cry, a child not coming back. Still the tree stands, a soul with roots so deep, it dreams for us while we forget to sleep. Thank you, everybody.
A bird does not sing because it has an answer, but it sings because it has a song, by Maya Angelou. My name is Annelisa Mdengwane. Good afternoon. Her grounding energy surrounds her. Slowly, it pulls me in. In her calmness, there's authority, and softness lies within. I know in her lives a spirit whose willpower has no limit. Like a flower in morning dew, a true goddess soon blooms. Like a river that never dries, my love for you will never die. Thank you.
Oh. That is fine. Okay.
Thank you, everyone, for sharing in those lovely performances. I have 2 books here that I am promoting in light of us learning through the writing sessions. Anyone can write a book, guys. And thankfully, we have these authors that are sharing their work. We have the book title, Kweyisakele. I think it's translated to Giving Up, or I Have Given Up. It's by Usivile Qeqe from Imbizo Arts. When I read the I don't know if it's called what is this called? An endorsement? A blurb. Well, the blurb is written in isiXhosa. Well, I think the whole book is written in isiXhosa. When I read this, it seems that the author is sharing their personal journey through encountering an accident and developing faith and sharing that journey with us. I actually had a note here to put it in so he shares his personal journey of overcoming adversity through faith. So our believers, faith, you guys are interested, Usivile is over there, you can speak to him. And then we have Unceba Dladla. Nceba, show yourself, please. It's a book of a series of poems, also written in isiXhosa. His blurb speaks on how the love of isiXhosa, the language, inspired him to contribute to poetry in the language, I guess. I don't know how to do this, but these are the books. You guys may connect with the authors. We have 2 more books. Gamtos Valleys. Oh, this is Genealogy, actually. Windows of Wonder, Gamtos Valley Poets. It's also, I'm seeing big creative writing. Betunana. Then there is Undercurrents by Saul Clates. Okay, I think the books will put them out there for anyone who wants to take a look. Time is running out as we are coming to the end of the session, and I will call upon Ukinelwe to proceed with the vote of thanks. Thank you very much. The books, guys, please come. Bednan, please.
Yeah, no, we did not just invite here. We invited authors. I don't know how to fix this, so I'm just going to take this out. Once more, again, Gineilwe Natu, I'm just here to do a vote of thanks. And first, I would like to express our sincere gratitude to our keynote speaker and respondents. Thank you, Unati Slasha, for such a powerful provocation and for inviting us to actually reflect on staging history and tracing the Iske poetry. Your insights actually set the tone for meaningful engagement, even outside of this workshop. You reminded us that poetry is actually not weightless, like people would think. Just think because they see a few lines and they think, there's no weight here. But it is, in fact, complex and need to be engaged with critically. Thank you, Mr. Mxolisi Nyezwa, again for the reading. I think we needed that a bit. Thank you, Mama Buzani, for your insightful response as well. A very special thank you goes out to our facilitators who guided the writing sessions and breakaway groups. Thank you for your willingness to share your skills and also support creativity and making the workshop more interactive, in fact. To the poets and performers, I am out of words. Thank you. Thank you for bringing words to life and reminding us of the power of poetry. The power of poetry to just move and challenge and at the same time connect us. Thank you. I'll just mention Silizwe Jago, Katleho Mufukeng, Tina Bubuya, and Brian Walter, Iske Poets, Helenville Poets, Salt Lake Poets, the NMU Poetry Society. We also have an NMU Hip Hop Society in the building. We also want to extend our appreciation to partner organizations. If you didn't know, this is a collaboration between Imbizo Arts, the Bay Creative Writing Project, and the East Cape Poets as well. Most participants that are here are from that background as well. Would also want to send out a special thank you to the Mandela Bay Theatre and Amazwi Museum. They graced us with their presence all the way from Makanda. Finally, to all participants and attendees, thank you for showing up. Thank you for your openness. Thank you for your curiosity, and thank you for your creativity. Your engagement is what truly brings this workshop to life. We bring that the conversations that started in this workshop, please let they even continue outside of this workshop. Thank you very much. I would like to proceed by also letting you know that we have a Mandela t-shirt outside that needs to be worked on. There's paint, needs to be worked on. It is Madiba t-shirt that we had designed in our office, CriSHET, for a project that we had some time last year, and then we decided it actually needs some attention. So we also do have some paint outside, so if you want to play around with some paint, please, you may put your creativity on that Madiba t-shirt. So with that, I'd like to thank you and release you from this building. Organizers, please make sure that people get home safely. Thank you so much.